Have you ever driven through a remote town and felt like something was watching you? Tonight's folk horror tale takes us deep into the snow-covered silence of the cold town, a place forgotten by time, but not by the forest. Before we begin, if you enjoy psychological horror and supernatural stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a dark tale. I didn't mean to stop in that town. I wasn't headed anywhere in particular, just driving to be away from the places I already knew. I'd been on the road for weeks, following no map, just a feeling. Every town I passed through looked the same eventually, same gas stations, same hollow-eyed clerks, same taste of dust in the air. But Cold Rest was different. It didn't feel like a place you stumbled on. It felt like a place that let you arrive. The snow started early that day. Fine grains of it drifted across the windshield like ash. I remember thinking it looked like something burned, not frozen. The highway twisted into forest, and the forest got thicker, darker, colder. I don't know when the radio died. I only noticed because the silence felt too sharp, like the sound had been cut out rather than faded. I lost signal about an hour before the car gave out. The dashboard lights blinked off, and the engine choked like it had swallowed something bitter. I rolled to a stop on the side of a narrow road flanked by trees that loomed like cathedral pillars. Snow was already piling up against the tires. No service. Dead battery. Dying light. I grabbed my coat, stuffed a flashlight and my old Polaroid camera in the backpack, and started walking. I don't know how long I walked, but it felt longer than it should have been. There were no signs, no mile markers, no other cars. Only the trees. At some point, I started seeing symbols carved into their bark, small, circular marks with crossing lines, like wheels or eyes. Most had been worn down by time, half swallowed by the tree's healing skin. I touched one out of instinct and felt a sudden jolt of cold behind my eyes. Not pain, just a shiver that went inward. That's when I saw the sign. A wooden post jutting out of the snow like a broken finger. It read, "Welcome to Cold Rest." Below it, someone had scratched out the population count. Just a smear of black over where numbers once were. I almost turned back, but then the bell rang. It wasn't loud, just a single, low toll carried thinly through the trees. It echoed more than it should have, like it wasn't just bouncing off bark, but rippling through something beneath the snow. I told myself it was a church bell. Small towns have those. Old customs. I followed the sound. Cold Rest was quiet, too quiet. Snow blanketed the roofs and the narrow streets, but it wasn't the kind of clean, untouched snow you'd see in postcards. It was flat, like the town had stopped breathing and the snow had settled in the stillness. The buildings were wooden, old, leaning in slightly as if whispering to one another. Their windows were dark or shuttered. The only movement came from a pair of heavy crows flapping away from a telephone wire as I passed beneath it. A man in a long coat was sweeping his porch. He stopped when he saw me. Not startled, just watching. I raised a hand. He didn't wave back. A sign outside a small diner read, "Open," but no lights were on inside. The snow on the steps hadn't been disturbed in hours. I was about to call out when a voice behind me said, "You look frozen." I turned, and there stood a woman in her 60s, bundled in wool and holding a steaming mug of something. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, but it was the first human warmth I'd seen since the car. "Come inside," she said. "You'll catch sick standing there." Her name was Marla. She and her husband kept a small boarding house at the edge of town. They had a room ready. No mention of money. Just, "We don't get many visitors. It's nice when someone comes through." I asked if there was a mechanic nearby. "There was," Marla said. "He passed. We don't drive much these days." Everything's here." I didn't argue. The house was warm, but not from any heating system I could find. The air had that still warmth, like in old places where the walls remember fires long since gone out. There were mirrors in every hallway, old ones, ornate, cracked, covered with thin veils of lace. I asked her about them. Marla just smiled. "They're traditional." That night, I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. There was a sound in the walls, not rats, not wind. A slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat too far away to hear clearly, but close enough to feel in the bones at midnight. The bell rang again. Point one told that I got up and looked out the window. Nothing moved, but the trees at the edge of town, just past the last house, looked different in the moonlight. Closer, like they had stepped forward while no one was watching. The next morning, I walked the town again. There were people, now. A few, mostly older. Some sweeping porches, some sitting on benches. All too still, all too quiet. They watched me, but none approached. I went into the diner. A girl was behind the counter, reading a book. She didn't look up. I asked if she had coffee. She said, "We don't serve strangers," then looked at me with eyes that were almost kind. "Almost. I won't be a stranger for long," I said. She shook her head. "You already are." That afternoon, I met a man sitting at the edge of the woods. He was muttering to himself, rubbing his hands together like he was cold, even though the sun had broken through the clouds for the first time all day. I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me, wide-eyed, and whispered, "Don't say her name." I hadn't said anything. She hears through the branches. She hears the sound behind your teeth. He started to cry. The cold isn't just weather. It's her. She is the cold. I asked who she was. He blinked, and then looked at me like he'd never seen me before, then stood up and walked away into the woods. He didn't leave tracks in the snow. That night, I found a book on the shelf in my room. It hadn't been there before. It was bound in leather, soft as skin, and smelled like smoke. The pages were full of handwritten notes, entries like a journal. She came again last night. The bell rang twice. That means the forest's waking. I think I'm forgetting. I read my name, and it looked wrong. On the last page, written in a scrawl that looked rushed, maybe even panicked. Nithra. I closed the book and turned off the lamp, and in the hallway, one of the mirrors cracked. I stopped trying to leave on the third day. I told myself I was just waiting for the snow to let up, or that maybe someone in town had jumper cables they'd been hiding. But the truth is simpler than that. The road was gone, not covered, not blocked. Gone. I walked for hours, retracing my steps through the trees, only to find myself standing once again in front of the welcome to cold rest sign, like the world had looped while I wasn't paying attention. The trees felt tighter now, not just close, but leaning, as though something unseen was hurting me. That night, Marla knocked on my door. She didn't come in, just spoke through the wood, her voice a whisper. "The town doesn't like wanderers. You should keep inside after dark." I asked her what that meant. She said nothing more, but I didn't sleep that night. I started having dreams, not the kind you forget, the kind that cling. In one, I was in a clearing, surrounded by trees so tall I couldn't see the sky. I was naked, the snow burning my skin, but I couldn't move. Something circled me, never seen, only heard. The crack of branches under invisible weight, breathing that wasn't mine, a voice that wasn't sound, but shape. "You were loud." I woke up biting my own hand to keep from screaming. There was snow on the floor of my room. I met him by accident. The madman. I hadn't seen him before, though I suspect he'd seen me. He lived in the chapel. Or what was left of it. A rotted-out husk near the edge of town, hidden behind overgrown hedges and a fence made of antlers. The bell tower had collapsed long ago, and now the building sagged like a dying thing. I only found it because I followed the sound. A rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood. It led me through the trees to a broken door, and inside, there he was. He looked like he'd been there for decades. Long beard, wild eyes, a coat patched with newspaper. He sat on the floor, surrounded by pages torn from books, muttering to himself. I said, "Hello?" He looked up sharply. "You're not from here." "No," he smiled, not kindly. "You will be." His name was Callum, or so he claimed. He told me he'd arrived 10 years ago, lost in the same snow, the same way. A broken car, a dead phone, the same silence. "They smiled when I got here," he said. "Smiles mean you're already dead. Just haven't noticed yet." He spoke in riddles, unfinished thoughts, but something in his voice felt grounded, like he was holding back lucidity for his own protection. He asked if I'd dreamed yet. I said yes. His expression changed. "She's touching you now, Nithra. She likes the broken ones, the ones who carry ghosts. That's why you're still here. You're echoing." I asked him what that meant. "It means you remember things that aren't allowed." He showed me a notebook, every page filled with symbols I couldn't read. Circles inside circles, branching patterns like frost on glass. Some bled into each other. Some pulsed on the page, as if ink was still drying. He jabbed a finger at one. "That's her mark. You've seen it." And I had. On the trees, on the diner window, on my skin, once after waking from a dream. "The town is a mouth," he said. "It chews slowly, and it only eats those who try to remember who they were." I left the chapel shaken. On the way back to the boarding house, I passed an old man sitting perfectly still on a bench, eyes closed, hands folded. A crow perched on his shoulder like a pet. The man didn't move, but the crow looked at me. It tilted its head and spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in memory. A woman laughing, a photograph burning, the smell of cold metal. My knees buckled. When I looked again, the bench was empty. Marla waited for me on the porch. "You've been wandering," she said. Not a question. That's not wise. Not after the bell. I asked her what the bell meant. She sat beside me, sighing like it cost her something. Once for the forest's breath, twice for her attention, 3 times means she's walking. I told her about Callum. Her eyes darkened. He should have left when the door opened for him. I asked what that meant. "What door?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said something I still hear in my sleep. "We don't pray to be saved. We pray to be forgotten." That night, I found another page in my room, folded under the pillow. The same leather paper, the same sharp, smoky scent. This one had no writing, just an image. A tall figure made of bark and bone, antlers stretched to the sky, eyes wide and empty, no mouth, hands like broken branches, all reaching inward. Below it, in faded red, "Nithra watches." I didn't sleep. At 3:03 a.m., the bell rang 3 times, and from the trees, I heard something answer. I started losing time, not in hours, in days. I'd wake up with snow in my hair, feet raw and bleeding, standing at the edge of the forest with no memory of how I got there. The boarding house door would be locked. My name scratched off the ledger. No one in town would look me in the eye anymore. The waitress at the diner spilled coffee when she saw me. The grocer turned the open sign around as I walked up. Marla wouldn't answer her door. Only the children still stared, always in silence, always in pairs. I returned to the chapel. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted Callum to tell me it was all in my head. Maybe I wanted someone to scream with me. But he was gone. The pages were burned. Ash covered the floor like black snow. One thing remained. A wooden effigy hanging from the rafters. It looked like the figure in the drawing, 0.7 feet tall, stitched together with roots and fur, antlers bound with twine, head bowed as if listening. The smell made my eyes water. Old blood, wet leaves, and something ancient at its feet, scratched into the floorboards. You're not dreaming anymore. The bell rang every night now, sometimes once, sometimes 3 times, but I stopped counting, because it was inside now. I saw it once, nithare.at least. I think I did, not directly. Just the shadow it cast, tall enough to scrape the ceiling, thin arms that moved like smoke, the outline of antlers wider than the doorway, and those eyes, 2 deep hollows that didn't reflect light, but drank it. It stood at the foot of my bed, not moving, not breathing, and somehow waiting. I didn't scream, because some part of me remembered her. I had memories that weren't mine. Or maybe they were. A cabin in the woods, firelight on a child's face, a woman's voice saying, "She never leaves until you say her name." A mirror covered with a sheet. A storm, blood in the snow, something buried beneath a tree. They came in flashes, like pieces of a dream I'd lived before I was born, and then they started talking back. It happened first in the mirror. I don't remember bringing one in, but it was there, old, tarnished, freestanding. I passed by it, then froze, because my reflection didn't follow. It stared back, same face, same clothes, but still while I moved. It blinked when I didn't, smiled when I frowned, and then it whispered, "You're almost home." I shattered the mirror, but the voice stayed. Callum returned. He found me in the snow behind the chapel, half conscious, hands frostbitten. He poured something warm down my throat and hummed to me, like I was a child. When I came to, he was sitting across from me in the ruined pews. "You've seen her," he said, not a question. I nodded. "Then you understand. There's no leaving." I asked him what she was. He closed his eyes. "Nithra isn't a god. She isn't a ghost. She's the memory of the land, the old grief, the echo of every scream never heard. This town fed her, and in return, she keeps it hidden, cold, safe, forgotten. But she hates noise, the kind grief makes, the kind you make." I asked why I was still alive. He laughed, gently. "You're not the way you think." I started forgetting things. My birthday. My last name. What brought me here in the first place. When I looked at my license, the face was mine, but the name was blurred. Letters scratched out like old film. My voicemail was full of static. Old recordings of people I used to know. But their voices all said the same thing. "Don't let her in." I tried to leave again, packed what little I had, took the long road, even with the snow. This time I walked until my feet bled, and I did find something. A clearing, a circle of stones. At the center, a single dead tree, hollow, bark split like a mouth, and carved into it, dozens of names. All in the same hand. Mine was one of them, freshly carved, still bleeding sap, and at the base of the tree, a pile of clothes. A wallet, an ID. Mine, but the picture showed someone else, eyes wide, mouth open, screaming. The snow turned black that night, and the town didn't speak anymore, only watched. I stopped speaking, not out of fear. Not exactly that it was instinct. Like my body knew something I didn't. Every word I said aloud, every question, every curse, every plea, I could feel her listening, waiting. That I kept thinking of the tree, of the names carved into it. The sap had stained my hands, and no matter how hard I scrubbed, it didn't come off. It sank in, turned the skin darker, cracked at the knuckles like old bark. That I didn't show Callum, that I didn't trust him anymore. Maybe I never should have. Marla finally let me in. She opened the door without a word, eyes hollow, hands shaking. Her house was bare, furniture covered, windows blacked out, mirrors turned to the wall. She led me to the basement without speaking. The light bulb overhead flickered like it was struggling to stay real. There, in the dirt beneath her floorboards, were bones, not arranged, not buried, just piled. Small, brittle bones, animal and human, layered deep into the soil. I didn't ask, because I already knew. They feed her in different ways, she said quietly, as if afraid of her own voice. Some with silence, some with blood, and some of us, she looked at her shaking hands, just try to forget. I asked her how long she'd been here. Long enough to forget where I came from. I asked why she stayed. Because it's colder out there. I asked who carved my name. She did, through you. I asked her what happens if I run. She looked at me like a mother might look at a dying child. Then she follows. That night, I dreamed of fire. Not real fire, memory fire. Cold and bright, burning in reverse. A house collapsing inward. A child standing alone in a snow-covered yard, mouth open in a silent scream. Me. Maybe. I woke up to the bell, but this time, it didn't stop. It rang and rang and rang until I realized there was no bell, just my own heartbeat, thudding in my ears. Louder than anything I'd ever heard. I looked in the mirror, and she looked back. She wore my face, but older, stretched, pale, bruised by frost. The antlers were growing from her skull now, splitting the skin, dripping black sap like tears. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Still, I understood. She was what would be left if I stayed. A husk. A vessel. A stillness with teeth. I broke the mirror and left the house. The air was dead. The town silent. The snow falling in perfect, soundless waves. The forest was closer now. I swear it had moved. The trees leaned in like they were listening, waiting. I followed the path back to the stone circle. The tree was still there. So was the ID, but this time, so was someone else. He sat at the base of the tree, wrapped in an old coat, laughing to himself. I recognized him immediately. It was the man from the photo, the one with my name. His face was worn, eyes bloodshot, fingers twitching like they were remembering pain. He looked at me and smiled like we were old friends. She's clever, he whispered. Takes your name first, then your memories, then your noise. I asked if he'd escaped. He laughed so hard he choked. You don't escape, Nithra. You just joined the choir. I asked why she didn't kill us. He looked up at the dead tree, and his smile vanished. Because silence is a better prison than death. The wind picked up. The tree breathed. I could feel it, like lungs beneath the roots. Inhale. Exhale. The forest wasn't made of wood anymore. It was flesh. Pale, cold, dreaming. And she was waking up. Say her name, the man said. That's how you end it. I shook my head. I didn't believe him. Say it, he repeated, louder this time. or she'll wear you forever. The ground split open between us. A long, wet crack. Black roots pushed through, slick with frost. A hand followed. Not human, long fingers. No nails, just bone and ice and hunger. The man screamed and leapt into the pit that he laughed as he fell. She keeps what remembers her. Then the earth closed, like it had always been whole. I ran, through the woods, through the snow, through the dead air. I don't know how long. When I collapsed, it wasn't from exhaustion. It was from the sound, because somewhere behind me, a voice was calling my name. I in my voice, over and over, and every time it spoke, I forgot something else. My mother's face, the color of the sky, the sound of laughter, the point of any of this. I woke up in my car, the engine running, gas light blinking, headlights pointed at an empty road. It was morning, clear sky, clean snow. No sign of a town, just a signpost buried half in ice. Welcome to Cold Rest. Population, blank. I didn't drive. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, knuckles pale, and then I heard it. The bell, soft, distant, not from the town, from the woods, behind me, and I knew I had never left. So what do you think Nithra is? A god? A curse? Or something older than either? Let me know in the comments what creeped you out most about the cold town. If you like this folk horror journey, hit like, share it with someone who loves psychological horror, and remember, stay warm out there. Some towns don't like visitors.